Play Your Role is a proud affiliate of Only Crits Dice. Check the link in the description for beautiful hard-edged dice sets as well as a coupon code in order to be able to get 15% off your next order. If you want amazing high-quality tabletop products as well as to support the channel, please go ahead and check it out. Enjoy the video.
It's been a long time, huh? I really dragged my feet getting this one out. Feels weird to be back. So for those of you who don't know, I've done several videos going over each class and why I think you should play them, why I think people don't want to play them, what I think the class is meant to be, and why I think you should play them for roleplay reasons. I stopped making this series a literal single class away from finishing it. Well, 2 if you're including the Artificer, 3 if you're including Blood Hunter. The reason I stopped making them is just I had a lot of hard reasons of why I should continue. 1, I loved the series and really didn't want to make it end. 2, I started making videos I liked better and thought people were enjoying more, so I kept making those. And lastly, well, the formats changed so much. Honestly, this series has acted as a sort of gauge of how my channel has gone. You can see me grow and change in my editing style, my storytelling style, literally everything. From the very first one to the very last one, it just evolved. And so it felt to me that when I made this very last few, I wanted them to represent where my channel was going to go for the future. And that was unfortunately very nebulous, as I never intend to stop growing and changing my style. It felt unattainable to continue it, especially because of this newest format. Before I did it just spoken word. You only heard my voice, you never saw my face. And eventually I started moving into doing some animation-like storytelling and moving pictures across the screen, and now it's just me talking. And somehow just me talking to a camera didn't seem to translate too well to this series, but I still want it to be a benchmark of how my channel has grown, and so I'm going to stick with it. Anyways, rant aside, let's get to the video.
In an open, cavernous ruin filled with ancient debris, a single individual walks, strolling past the years upon centuries of history. The only light in the room emanates from the tip of his staff, a light green glow that casts ominous shadows across everything it sees. Before him stands a massive looming statue, wings extending from its side as it looks down at him with an impartial glare. Despite being made of nothing more than stone, it seemed as if it was judging him, determining whether he had the right or ability to be here. The man removed his hood from his head softly and leaned down to the base of the statue, looking across the runes that were inscribed within its base. Gibberish to most, and absolutely insane rumblings to other, he could understand each and every one of them. Each rune a different word inscribed from a different long-lost language, only known to those who had taken the time and resources to study it. Softly, he begins to read out what it says. I desire knowledge, but require it not. I speak the language, to unleash the lock. Mere seconds after finishing his statement, the ground began to rumble and the statue began to move. He could see its eyes open up, its hands widen as it stared down at him with a deep, penetrating glare. All around him, debris began to fall and shatter, rocks nearly falling from the ceiling and smacking his skull. The quick flick of his wrist and a few arcane mumblings, a shield began to appear above him, translucent and barely blocking the debris from smashing on top of him and penetrating his skull. After moments, as if it had never happened, things died down, and everything grew silent. He peered around him quickly and realized that with all the chaos he had not noticed, the statue had scooted back, just but a foot, and revealed an entrance to a cavern below. A smile plays on his lips as he begins to go downwards. It seems that those with knowledge will be rewarded.
Why should you play a wizard? So this is an interesting one because I've actually literally never played a wizard. I've played so many NPCs as wizards. In fact, most of my NPCs that have played important parts of my campaigns have been wizards. It's a crutch that I've sort of relied on. But that should be a sort of testament to the fact that I think wizards are really cool, but I don't find them interesting as characters. And that does cause some difficulty because they really are super cool and they can make really cool characters, but they get cliched and stereotyped.
A wizard!
See, the reason that most people don't want to play a wizard is because it seems too basic. You're gonna go play this fantasy game, a roleplay game, DND. Wizard is just already the assumption. Yes, there's gonna be a wizard, so why should I play one? Because there will be one. I mean, even in the most basic story for D&D that was ever created, Lord of the Rings, literally what a lot of D&D was based off of, Gandalf was there, the wizard, the gray wizard, eventually the white wizard. Spoilers if you haven't seen Lord of the Rings, which if you haven't, please do. We'll read them. They're really good stories. But that being said, Gandalf was there. He was the wizard. He was the most powerful member in the party. And so there's just this assumption that there will be a wizard. Even if none of the player characters play a wizard, there will be an NPC wizard. and I haven't done much to forego that cliche. All of my NPCs who tend to help out the party are in some level or form a wizard. And so when you have this staple, this giant archetype that everybody assumes will be there and is so quintessential to Dungeons and Dragons as a whole, how do you make them interesting? How do you make them exciting? And for that reason is why I see most people just forego wizard. Well, I don't really want to play that archetype, but I could play a cleric, or I could play a bard, or I could play literally anything with full spellcasting and have a little bit more flavor to the wizard. And so that's where a lot of people move away from the wizard. They don't really necessarily want to play it. But then you get into what the wizard is supposed to be, and I think that's where we find, one, where the cliche comes from, and two, where we can go in a more interesting path. So the wizard is the quintessential arcane master. They are the knowledgeable, powerful, reality warping god later in the game. When they first start, they're a student. They're somebody who's just learning the basic rules of what is a fundamental actual system in D&D, magic. Magic is, in Dungeons and Dragons, the same as physics. It's just something you learn how to do. It is a base rule, and so those who go and learn to manipulate it and create and destroy, they go and learn at the basics. They start at level 1. And so you think that there's this person who is very knowledgeable, but has not yet learned to turn that knowledge into power. And over time, they will grow stronger and stronger and more powerful until they can literally tear apart reality with a wish spell. That's an exciting fantasy, but it doesn't really lead much in the forms of flavor. See, it's really easy to flavor things like the cleric because all their subtypes and subclasses lead them to certain things. If you're playing a light cleric, then you're glowing with radiance, or if you're playing a war cleric, then you're probably decked out, and every time you attack, there's this holy radiance that burns off your weapon. Same with paladin or ranger or bard. The subclasses really lead to being able to flavor it in a dramatically interesting way. For wizards, you spellcast. It's what you do. You cast a spell. And yes, you can get a little exciting with that, but I think it's more difficult to flavor those things, and that's where some of the people get the hangups on them. Caleb Widogast is an amazing example from Critical Role. He was an amazing example of how to flavor your spells in an interesting way, but he's still just a wizard. You can look at different other classes and see the way they flavor things and find more fun things. Even a fighter, if you flavor the different ways that they fight, they can seem entirely distinct. But wizards, even with their subclasses, feel very much like they are indistinct from each other. They all cast spells, and even if they cast their spells a little bit more differently than the other, they all do the same thing, and it just, I don't know, for me, it becomes more difficult to flavor things, and that's just me personally. But if you take all that and take a step back and just think about what the wizard can do, it becomes so much more fascinating. Wizards are the premier utility casters in the game. They can swap out their spells more than anybody else. They can regain spell slots on short rests using their arcane recovery ability. They have the ability to learn more spells by writing them down from other spell books into theirs, and they have one of the largest actual spell lists in the game. They are incredible at learning and doing anything you may need them to with just a little bit of prep time.
Give me time to work.
Which is amazing and creates such a fun sort of character. They can do almost anything so long as they're given the time to do it. And that right there is one of the main reasons to play a wizard. They're hyper intelligent, they're always prepared if you give them the ability to do that. That is a really fun archetype. And their different subclasses really can give more utility into what it is you want to do. Necromancy allows you to have more control over the battlefield as you have additional units on there. Evocation allows you to be more destructive without harming your party nearly as much. All of them can be incredibly entertaining and interesting, but the flavor is what holds a lot of people back from playing them. But I think that really is missing the point even on my own front, because the flavor is not in the spellcasting. The flavor is in why you spellcast. Like I said, magic is a fundamental portion of the world. It is like physics, so anybody should be able to go and learn it. And there are some settings that disagree with that and say only certain people can, but I disagree with that fundamentally. In a world where anybody can use the weave, I feel like you should be able to truly go and learn. So why doesn't everybody? Because it's hard. Why doesn't everybody go and learn physics and get a physics degree? Because it's hard. It's hard to learn that, and not everybody wants to. So you take somebody who's willing to take that drive, and that's where the core part of the character is that makes wizards so fascinating. Why are they willing to? What is it that they're doing? What is their drive?
What motivates you?
You can have two wizards who cast the same spells, and yes, you could flavor them however you want. One person is using Fireball as a tiny little mote that goes and explodes, and the other one is literally creating this field of oil that then ignites and explodes. Same spell, different flavor, really exciting, but the reasons they learned to do that are what make a wizard. One of them was studious and was driven by their family to be the best, to be the absolute strongest, and so they have become a narcissist in their need to be validated. While the other one learned because they had no other choice. They were down in the dirt and going to die, and all they had was a book to be able to read, to be able to get themselves a job, to be able to get them the food that they needed, and they have that drive to survive. One doing it for validation, one doing it for survival, and those two wizards, despite doing the same thing, suddenly become infinitely more different. The core part of a wizard is somebody who is willing to learn, somebody who has the drive to. And I think that is a fascinating reason of why you should play a wizard, because it is such a unique motivation. It is such a unique thing because while a barbarian and a fighter learn to fight through just physicality and everybody else learns through their different things, the clerics get their powers from their god by worshiping them, the bards get their power through their performance and their need to be able to perform, but a wizard does it purely for the intention of attaining that power. They research, they learn, they read, because they need that power. For whatever reason, whatever the motivation is, that's why they do it. They are the one unique class that specifically drives for that power. Warlock does this as well, don't get me wrong, but they make a deal for it. They get a shortcut. The wizard intentionally throws themselves into it to be able to gain that ability to cast magic. And their motivation for doing so, I think, should be fascinating. So there you go. That's why I think you should play a wizard at your table. Go out into the world and make it your own, you beautiful bastards. Don't forget to have a great day, and never forget to play your role. Thank you. Come again.